These are three true stories where ordinary lives turned into nightmares. It begins with a young couple moving into what seemed like their dream home, until shadows outside their window began to linger just a little too long. Then, a woman who thought she'd escaped her controlling ex, only to find his voice returning, but through the mouths of complete strangers. And finally, a late-night drive down an empty highway, where a simple set of headlights behind the wheel twisted into something far more sinister. Each story starts in the familiar. Each one escalates beyond reason, and each leaves behind only fear and unanswered questions. But which one will stay with you long after the lights go out? They thought they'd found it, their dream home. A quiet little house on the edge of town, with enough space to finally breathe. But on their very first walk through the yard, they noticed something unsettling. The property next door. It was abandoned, windows blackened with years of dust, its yard swallowed by weeds. And there was no fence. At first, it was just small annoyances, locals cutting across their garden as if it were a public path. But then, the wife noticed a man standing in the upstairs window of that abandoned house. No light behind him. No movement. Just a silhouette staring directly at them. The intrusions grew bolder. At dusk, strange men slipped into their garden, offering stolen tools and muttering things the couple couldn't quite hear. Others lingered at the edges of the yard, staring, unmoving. When they finally called the police, the officers shrugged it off. It's a rough area. Don't escalate it. The reassurance felt hollow. Then the nights changed. They began hearing a low whistle just outside their bedroom window. Always the same tune. Always around 3 in the morning. Security cameras they installed were tampered with. One night, all the footage from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. vanished completely. The sense of being hunted tightened around them. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow stretching across the lawn. It all felt like part of some game they weren't supposed to understand. And then they saw him. One night, the husband pulled the curtain back to reveal a masked intruder standing motionless in the yard, arms outstretched, body rigid, like a crucifix planted in the earth. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just waited. The harassment escalated into pounding at the doors, crowbars scraping against windows, and groups of masked figures gathering silently at the edge of their property. Each night they returned, closer, bolder. The police dismissed most of it. No evidence, no arrests. To the couple, it felt like the entire town had turned its back. They were prisoners in their own home, terrified to sleep, yet unable to leave. But just when they thought it couldn't get worse, the next knock on the window proved this was only the beginning. After years of control, she finally left him. Caleb. He wasn't the kind of man who hit. His power was quieter, more suffocating. He decided what she wore, who she spoke to, even the way she arranged her books. It took her months to break free, to cut him off completely. She moved to a new city, changed her number, even rented a new apartment under a shortened version of her name. For the first time in years, she felt like herself again. She could laugh without fear of being silenced. She could breathe. But Caleb had always warned her, "You can leave me, but you'll never really get away." At the time, she dismissed it as the manipulative rambling of a man losing control. But then the encounters began. It started small. At a coffee shop, the barista handed her drink with a smile and said Caleb's favorite phrase, "Keep your eyes sharp, little bird." She froze. Those were words Caleb whispered only to her, late at night, when no one else was around. Days later, her rideshare driver hummed a song under his breath, the same obscure ballad Caleb used to play on repeat. When she asked the driver about it, he claimed he'd never heard the song before. Each encounter grew stranger. People she'd never met parroted Caleb's words, gestures, and tone. Once, a woman in the grocery store leaned over and whispered, "You should have never left him," before walking away without another glance. Terrified, she did the one thing she had promised never to do. She looked him up. Caleb was in a rehab facility. Verified. Locked away. No phone, no internet. He couldn't be orchestrating this. And yet, he was everywhere. One evening, she returned to her apartment to find her doormat flipped upside down. On it, a note scrawled in jagged handwriting. "Still watching, little bird." Shaking, she fled to a hotel, thinking distance would give her safety. But at midnight, there was a knock at the door. She opened it to find a woman standing there, her face blank, eyes unfocused. The woman didn't speak. She only slipped a folded paper into her hand before walking away. When the front desk checked security logs, they insisted no such woman had ever come through the building. Inside the paper were more of Caleb's words, things he had whispered to her alone, things no one else could possibly know. And in that moment, she realized this wasn't just about Caleb anymore. He had tapped into something larger, a cult-like network, or perhaps a hidden service, people willing to act as vessels for his presence. He didn't need to be near her to haunt her. He had already found a way in. And just when she believed she could outrun Caleb's shadow, a stranger leaned close and whispered something only he could have known. It was supposed to be a family getaway, a summer trip to Michigan's Great Lakes, a rental house big enough for everyone, cousins and uncles and kids tumbling over each other. But the moment they arrived, something felt off. The house was neglected, paint peeling, shutters rattling in the breeze though no wind touched the trees. Inside, the air was stale, heavy, as if no one had lived there for years. The main rooms quickly filled with beds and luggage, so a few family members were forced to sleep in the detached garage at the back of the property. At first, it was brushed off with jokes. You guys get the private suite. But the garage was cold, damp, and carried a smell like rotting wood. No one admitted it out loud, but everyone felt it. The place wasn't right. That first night, the unease sharpened. Trips to the washer and dryer in the garage felt unbearable, as if someone were watching from the corners. Then came the noises, deep, thunderous bangs that shook the garage walls like something massive had slammed against them. The uncle, trying to reassure the kids, grabbed a flashlight and went outside. The family watched from the window as the beam cut across the yard. He froze, because there was a man standing just beyond the light's edge. And then, in the blink of an eye, the man vanished into thin air. They tried to dismiss it, a trick of the shadows, exhaustion, nerves. But the next morning, the children found a small card left on the garage step, a gesture hand-drawn, its grin stretched unnaturally wide. By nightfall, more appeared. Cards tucked under shoes, slipped into folded laundry, balanced on the porch railing. Always the jester, always watching. The final night, the sound of footsteps creaked across the porch, heavy, deliberate. The family held their breath, listening as the doorknob rattled. Then came the unmistakable sound of someone trying to force their way into the basement door. Panic erupted. They packed in silence, every slam of a suitcase drowned out by the hammering in their chests. By dawn, they abandoned the lake house entirely, leaving behind food, clothes, and even their deposit. To this day, they don't know if it was a neighbor trying to terrify them, something paranormal lingering in the neglected house, or something far darker that had chosen them. But leaving didn't mean escaping, because some trips don't just end, they follow you home. Each story began in the same way, in places that should have felt safe, a home of their own, a fresh start after heartbreak, a family trip meant for laughter and rest. But ordinary settings became the stage for relentless terror. The dream home turned into a hunting ground, stalked by masked intruders who seemed untouchable. The woman who broke free found herself haunted not by one man, but by his shadow, echoed through strangers who should have been harmless. And the family by the lake discovered that even joy and togetherness couldn't protect them when something unseen decided to creep in. These weren't just random scares. They weren't accidents or tricks of imagination. They were targeted. They were personal. And above all, they were unexplainable. Because the true horror isn't the knock on the window, the whisper in the crowd, or the jester card left at your door. It's the realization that sometimes the threat isn't outside. It's already waiting inside your life, closer than you can ever see. So the question remains, if it were you, would you fight back, risking the darkness following you deeper into its game? Or would you run, knowing that no matter how far you go, something might still be watching?